Hello and welcome to the third Easy JavaScript tutorial, part of easyprogramming.net. Today I want to give you some more information on your browser's JavaScript console and some of the best ways you can use the console to your benefit. The console exists in most browsers, but for this tutorial I'll be using Chrome, but please feel free to follow along in any browser. One of the wonderful things about JavaScript is that you can run it as is, which means you don't need to run it on a web server. I'm running this basic HTML file from my computer. For my text editor, I am using Brackets. If you'll remember, Brackets is the first text editor on my list from tutorial number 1, the introduction to JavaScript. There's nothing special about this HTML file, it's just 16 lines of HTML, and in the middle, inside the div tag div ID math here, I have a little JavaScript code which pretty much outputs a variable called add, concatenating it with 5 plus 5 is blah blah blah, which pretty much adds 5 and 15. Normally we wouldn't put JavaScript in the middle of HTML. It isn't really good practice. We would normally use a .js file and reference it from this HTML and modify this HTML from the JavaScript file. But for the purposes of this tutorial, just for simplicity's sake, I'll be using just these 4 lines of JavaScript in this code. And I also have a second div here called modify me, which has nothing. It doesn't have any inner text or inner HTML, which we will use to just display something from the console. The JavaScript console can be more than just for output. In the last tutorial I showed you that you can output the word hello world onto the console, but the JavaScript console is more dynamic than that. You can use it to input information. So let's just look at the console here. I have the console open here. This is the elements. I'm just going to click on the console tab here to get a bigger view of the console. The reason you see here it says 5 plus 15 is 20 is because in my HTML file I did this 2 pieces of code where I did 5 plus 15 and it outputs the value of add, which is 20. If I change this to 20, it should output 25. Let's save. Refresh. There you go. 5 plus 15 is 25, which doesn't make sense. Let's just do 5 plus 20, save, go back, refresh, and there you go. 5 plus 20 is 25. So here we're outputting something into the console from an HTML file. The JavaScript console can also be used to do your basic JavaScript. You can even use it to do math. For example, if you do 5 plus 5, press enter, it gives you a 10. You can do 10 times 200. It'll give you 2,000. So you can do math here. You can even do entire lines, entire scripts of JavaScript in this console and get your output. So let's say I want to declare a new variable called day, and I'll say it's Sunday. If I press enter, it says undefined. It's because I'm not returning anything. But if I type in day, which is a variable that I just defined, it'll output Sunday. In the last tutorial, I went briefly over the alert function, which is actually a method of the window object. We can even trigger alerts from the console here. We can say hello from the JS console. And if I press enter, there we go. This is my alert pop-up. It says hello from the JS console. And it returns undefined because we're not returning anything. The console is expecting to return something. We can even play around with other objects. For example, the window object, we can do inner height just to get what the inner height of the web page is, and it's at 344. So 344 pixels. We can do window.inner width, and it's 1280, which makes sense. So as you can see, the console is really dynamic. You can use it as your JavaScript playground, where you can just write code here and see how it runs before putting it into your HTML or your JavaScript files and seeing how it runs there. Let's just clear the console here just so it's less cluttery. You can also do multiple lines of code in the JavaScript console. So far I've only been doing one and pressing enter, but for example, if I do a for loop, which would normally be multiple lines, you can put it all in one line, but just to make it look pretty, we can do multiple lines. Don't worry what the for loop is right now. You can actually watch my C++ tutorial where I go over the for loop. The syntax is absolutely the same in JavaScript, and I will go over the for loop in JavaScript at a later tutorial more in depth. So I'll just do bar I to 0. I is less than, let's count to 10. Let's count to 9. It's going to go to 0 to 9. And then I plus plus. And to make it so that it doesn't run, if I press enter now, it'll just say uncaught syntax error, right? If I don't want it to run, you hold shift and press enter, so it takes you to a new line. You can do shift and enter again. Tab won't work here, so spacing here is a little bit off, so we'll do console.log, and let's just output the value of I, which is going to go from 0 through 9, because we're running it 10 times. Parentheses, shift and enter, remember. Let's close the bracket and press enter. There we go. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then undefined because it didn't return anything. Pretty straightforward, right? So this code I can actually copy and paste into my HTML and it'll output what you see here. But we're using the JavaScript console as kind of a playground, kind of a sandbox, if you will. But that's not all. Remember, in my HTML file I have this div ID called modify me, which we can use to input anything onto the web page itself. I briefly went over document.get element by ID last time. I'll go a little bit over it right now. We're just getting the modify me ID from this HTML page, and I want to modify the inner text and just say hello from the JavaScript console. So if I press enter, it will dynamically output this text onto the web page here where this div tag is. Let's run it. There you go. Hello from the JavaScript console. And it returns hello from the JavaScript console onto the console itself. Pretty easy, right? Just a few minutes ago I went over that you can declare variables in the console here. If I type in day, the Sunday is still here. It's still in this session. As long as I remain in this session, it'll stay here. I can assign the entire document get element by ID modify me to a specific variable and do stuff with it. Let's just do that. Document.get element by ID modify me. Whoops. Going a little ahead. There I go. Now modify me is that entire document. Modify me, it gives you everything in that tag into the console. So now we can use modify me instead of document.get element by ID modify me. Whoops, I went backwards. There I go. Let's just do that. So modify me. So we can use this as instead of document.get element by ID. So if I do inner text here, hello from the JS console. There I go. I made an edit just by using modify me.get inner text rather than document.get element by ID by modify me blah blah blah. So you don't have to type it every time. You can just type in modify me, and let's do inner HTML. I'll do just make it strong, right? Hello from JS console in bold. The difference between the inner text and the inner HTML is that the inner HTML allows you to actually input direct HTML into the page rather than just text. Where if I use text, it would actually output strong blah blah blah. So if I press enter, there we go, and it's in bold. I'll just do the inner text just to show you what happens. Text, there I go. It outputted the actual strong tags. So if you want to output actual HTML, use inner HTML. If you want to output just text, use inner text. Most of the time you'll see people use just inner HTML for everything, which is fine. Well, anyway, this is a brief introduction to the JavaScript console. It's really dynamic. There's a lot you can do here. You can do math here. You can modify the web page directly from here without ever needing an HTML file or a JavaScript file. It's a really good sandbox area for you to test your code before you write it down, see if it works. If you have any questions about the JavaScript console or JavaScript in general, please ask in the comments below. Please visit my website at easyprogramming.net. It'll give me an error. It's nothing. And thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe for future tutorials.